The first rays of the sun stretched over the city, golden fingers brushing the tallest towers and slipping into narrow alleys below. The light caught the glass and steel of skyscrapers, making them sparkle like the crowns of kings. Yet, beneath this shining crown, the shadows of the city told a different story. In the alleys and streets where the sun hesitated, children ran barefoot over dusty paths, their laughter a bright thread against the gray walls. Vendors began to stir, lifting shutters and arranging baskets of fruit, fish, and handmade trinkets, their voices calling out in rhythm, a song older than the city itself. The city had its heartbeat, and it pulsed through every corner. Horns honked, bicycle bells rang, and the chatter of neighbors carried stories of joy and sorrow. A boy tripped over a stray chicken and tumbled into a vendor's basket. "Careful, little one!" the vendor shouted, laughing as he helped the boy up. The streets were alive, full of movement and sound, a dance between struggle and survival, wealth and want. In the distance, the wealthy moved in their sleek cars, the engines purring like tamed lions, oblivious to the humble lives below. They glanced at the streets from high towers, where morning light reflected on polished floors, and smelled the scent of freshly brewed coffee in glass cafes. Children in fine shoes waited with nannies by luxury cars, while their eyes, curious and bright, still watched the chaos of the streets below, unknowingly learning lessons about life that money could not buy. Amid the market's clamor, a beggar sat quietly on a worn mat, his hands cupped around a small bowl. He was unnoticed, yet he observed everything with the careful eyes of one who has learned life's secrets through hardship. He saw the children, the vendors, the rich passing in their shiny chariots, and he knew the city's truth. No matter how high a tower, the earth below always holds the stories that matter. A street vendor, arranging a basket of mangoes, shook his head and muttered a proverb. Even the tallest tree bends to the wind, yet it cannot hide the roots. The beggar's eyes lifted, as if he understood the weight of those words, feeling the wisdom of ages settle around him. The city hummed, full of life, yet beneath the surface, invisible threads connected each person, weaving a tapestry of fate, struggle, and hope. And there, among the bright towers and bustling alleys, walked Kofi Mensah, a man of wealth and influence, yet touched by a quiet sorrow. His eyes scanned the streets not for opportunity, but for something missing, a fragment of a life he had lost long ago. The children's laughter and the vendors' songs reached him like a distant drum, stirring memories and questions he had buried deep. The city awakened, and with it, the story of two worlds, one of opulence and one of hardship, began to move toward its inevitable meeting. The market came alive with the first heat of the morning, a chorus of voices blending with the calls of hawkers and the clatter of carts on cobblestone streets. Bright baskets of mangoes, papayas, and bananas spilled their colors onto worn tables. Bolts of fabric, patterned with the swirls of ancient symbols, hung like banners in the sunlight, fluttering in the gentle breeze. Every corner seemed to hum with life, a rhythm older than the city itself. An elderly woman, her head wrapped in a colorful cloth, shook her head and muttered to a young boy helping her carry yams. "Child, do not forget, the one who plants patience will harvest wisdom. Even the richest market cannot teach what life itself will." The boy nodded, eyes wide, learning the truth hidden in her simple words. Nearby, a young man peddling carved wooden figures called out, "Fine carvings, talented hands, shaped by the river spirits themselves." A little girl stopped, her eyes shining with wonder. She handed him a few coins, and he smiled, bowing slightly, murmuring, "May your heart always see beauty, little one, even in shadows." A quarrel arose over a crate of tomatoes. Two vendors shouted, voices rising like thunder, but an old man stepped between them, shaking his staff and saying, "Do not let greed blind you. The river flows for all, yet it does not take more than it gives." The vendors muttered, embarrassed, and stepped back. Those watching nodded knowingly, learning the lesson without needing to speak it aloud. Children dashed between stalls, their laughter weaving through the calls of traders. The sound was bright and piercing, echoing against the walls of nearby buildings. A stray dog followed a little boy, dodging baskets and bundles, and the boy laughed, chasing it down the narrow path. Life here was hard, yet full of joy, resilience, and shared stories. Above it all, in the shadows of the tall city towers. The beggar Ebo moved quietly through the throng. Though unnoticed by most, his eyes observed everything. He saw the joy and the struggles, the small acts of kindness hidden among the hustle. When a woman tripped over a sack, he was there to steady her. When a merchant gave a child a leftover piece of bread, he smiled, knowing generosity was a heartbeat of the streets. Kofi Mensah walked past, his polished shoes clicking against the stone, his suit catching the morning light. He paused, drawn by the laughter, the calls, and the wisdom hidden in the elders' words. He saw Ebo briefly, their eyes meeting for a heartbeat, and a strange warmth settled in his chest, a memory he could not place, yet one that stirred something long forgotten. The market told its story, rich and poor intertwined, in a dance older than the city. Every gesture, every call, every shared piece of bread carried a lesson. Patience, kindness, humility, and the knowledge that life's true value is measured not in wealth, but in the bond we forge, the wisdom we pass, and the humanity we show. And as the city thrummed with life, Kofi felt the threads of fate weaving quietly around him, pulling him toward truth he had yet to discover. The narrow alleys whispered stories of struggle and survival. Sunlight barely reached the ground, slipping past sagging roofs and piles of worn wood. Here, families lived tightly together, sharing space, hope, and sometimes silence. The smell of earth and smoke mixed with the distant scent of fruits from the bustling markets above, creating a bittersweet reminder of what the city offered and what it withheld. Children ran barefoot over broken stones, laughing and shouting, their voices rising like tiny drums against the quiet tension of poverty. A boy rolled a tattered ball, chasing with a cheer that echoed against the brick walls. Catch it, he shouted, and a little girl stretched her hand to snatch it midair, her eyes bright despite the thinness of her arms and the raggedness of her dress. An elder woman sat on a low stool outside a cracked door, her hair streaked with gray, her eyes sharp and full of memory. She leaned toward a small group of children and began to speak in a voice that was soft but commanding, carrying the weight of centuries. Listen, my children. Long ago, the river gave and it took. Those who are patient and kind will see its gifts again. But those who fight against fate will stumble in its waters. The children listened wide-eyed, as though they were absorbing not just her words, but the history of their ancestors. Nearby, a young mother shared her last piece of bread with a neighbor whose children had cried themselves to sleep the night before. We have little, she said, but what we give to one another makes us rich. The neighbor nodded, tears gleaming, and placed her hand over her heart. From above, the luxury towers cast their shadows over these alleys, a stark reminder of the city's uneven hand. The glittering windows reflected the morning sun, a world apart, where life seemed polished and easy. The contrast was a lesson that even children understood without being told. Some are born into abundance, others into hardship, yet the spirit remains equal in all. Ebo, the beggar who wandered between these worlds, paused in the alley, observing the children and elders. His eyes, soft yet searching, traced a line between shadow and light. He thought of his own lost family, of choices and betrayals that had shaped him, and he knew the city's lesson. Fate touches everyone, but the heart's courage decides how we endure it. A boy tripped over a piece of broken wood, crying out. Ebo knelt, steadying him, his rough hands gentle. Stand tall, little one, he said. Even when the path is broken, your steps will find their way. The boy looked up, nodding, a spark of hope flickering in his gaze. Above the alleys, the laughter of children, the shared meals, and the whispered proverbs were like threads in a tapestry, weaving resilience and humility into the very walls. The city, in all its brilliance and disparity, was alive with lessons, reminding everyone who walked its streets that while fate's hand may be uneven, the courage, kindness, and wisdom of people could balance its weight. And in the quiet of the alley, where shadow met sun, Kofi Mensah caught sight of Ebo's figure. Something stirred within him, a memory or a longing he could not name, yet it pulled him closer, setting the stage for a discovery that would change both their lives forever. Beyond the narrow alleys and crowded streets, the city rose into a different world. Gleaming towers stretched toward the sky, their glass windows reflecting the morning sun like polished shields. Smooth, wide streets carried luxury cars whose engines purred quietly, a stark contrast to the clamor of the markets below. The air smelled faintly of polished stone and expensive perfume, mingling with a faint scent of coffee drifting from elegant cafes. In this world, people move with careful precision. Men and women in tailored suits stepped from black sedans, their faces polite yet distant, eyes guarded. Conversations were hushed, measured, and filled with careful judgment. A young woman carrying a designer bag passed an older man selling handmade baskets, barely noticing him, yet the street whispered a silent lesson. Wealth can isolate as easily as it can protect. A man in a crisp white shirt adjusted his tie, glancing at the street below. "Everything must run on schedule," he muttered to his assistant. "Time is money, and mistakes cost dearly." The assistant nodded, eyes scanning the scene, aware of the unspoken pressures that weighed on every soul here. Even laughter was rare and measured, as though joy might disturb the delicate balance of expectations. Children in this world played behind high gates, their giggles muffled by thick walls and polished floors. They watched the market chaos below with curiosity, learning early that the world was divided by more than walls and streets. It was divided by fate, by wealth, and by tradition. Their fathers reminded them constantly, a true man honors his name and lineage, or the spirits will remind him. Ebo, still moving to the shadows, paused at the edge of this world. His eyes took in the towers, the smooth streets, the luxury cars. He saw the isolation, the quiet tension, the way people's lives seemed bound by gold and expectation rather than by community or heart. Yet he understood the rhythm beneath it, the silent truth of human ambition, pride, and fear. Kofi walked among them, his expensive shoes clicking on polished stone. He felt the weight of this world pressing in, its rules, its expectations, its ambition, but a part of him remained restless. His eyes drifted downward, toward the alleys, toward the faces of the people who struggled daily yet carried courage, laughter, and wisdom. He felt a pull, a subtle tug at his heart, as if fate was guiding him towards something unseen. A passing woman in a flowing dress nearly stumbled, and a driver in a sleek car stopped abruptly. "Patience," Ebo whispered softly to himself, remembering an old proverb. Even the tallest tree bends to the wind, yet its roots remain strong. The word seemed to echo through the streets, invisible yet present, a reminder that ambition alone could never replace wisdom or compassion. In this world of glass, stone, and silent rules, the divide was clear. Wealth offered comfort, but also isolation. Tradition and ambition clashed quietly in every glance, every measured word. And for Kofi, walking these streets, the lesson was already beginning to take shape. To navigate life fully, he would need more than money and power. He would need courage, humility, and the heart to reconcile both worlds. Amid the hum of the city, where markets and towers collided in a riot of sound and color, a figure moved quietly, unnoticed by the passing throngs. His name was Ebo, and though his clothes were worn and his step slow, his eyes carried a depth that few could see. He paused for a moment, watching the children dart between the fruit stalls, laughing and chasing one another as though the weight of the world had not yet touched them. He observed the merchants, shouting their prices and haggling with practiced skill, yet always leaving space for kindness. "Take more than you can carry, young one vendor said to the child picking through the oranges. "But remember, a generous heart is richer than the basket you hold." Ebo smiled softly, remembering words his own father had spoken long ago, words that had guided him through years of hardship. From the shadows of the narrow streets to the gleaming towers above, Ebo moved like a thread connecting two worlds. He passed beneath polished windows, catching the reflection of wealth and ambition, and yet his attention remained with the lives below, faces lined with struggle, hands busy with work, hearts full of unspoken courage. He knew that in the eyes of the city's rich, he was invisible, but in his mind and heart, he carried the wisdom of the streets, the lessons of endurance, and the secrets of human resilience. A child stumbled near his feet, dropping a clay cup that shattered on the stones. Ebo bent, gently lifting the pieces, and handed the child a small, worn coin from his own pocket. "Do not fear the fall," he said. "Even broken things can teach us strength." The child looked up, eyes wide with wonder, and ran off, the laughter trailing behind like a bell of hope. Across the street, a wealthy man in a tailored suit passed, glancing down at the chaos below with thinly veiled disdain. He did not notice Ebo, nor the small acts of care and attention he offered. Yet the beggar's presence was not lost on the city itself. Ebo was a silent observer, a keeper of lessons hidden beneath the glitter and ambition, reminding those who paused to see that wealth alone could not measure the richness of life. Ebo's gaze lingered on the market, taking in the interactions, the bargains, and the laughter. Each gesture carried meaning. Each exchange a story, and each lesson whisper of patience, generosity, and the courage to endure. He walked on, his steps slow but deliberate, bridging the invisible gap between poverty and opulence. In his quiet way, he bore the weight of wisdom that the city had almost forgotten. That true insight does not reside in towers or gold, but in the hearts of those who see, listen, and care. Above him, the towers reflected the morning sun like mirrors, and for a moment, Ebo allowed himself to imagine a world where the lessons of the streets and the ambitions of the rich could meet. Perhaps one day, he thought, the city would understand that its greatest treasures were not the buildings, the cars, or the coins, but the hearts that beat quietly, generously, in every alley and street. And as he moved on to the bustling crowd, unseen yet profoundly present, the city continued its rhythm around him, carrying forward the stories, the struggles, and the hidden wisdom of a world that only those willing to look closely could ever truly see. Kofi Mensah stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of his penthouse, the city sprawling beneath him like a living mosaic of light, color, and motion. Gleaming towers reached toward the sun. Cars glided along polished streets, and the market below buzzed with life. Yet, despite the grandeur surrounding him, an emptiness lingered in his chest, a silence that even wealth could not fill. He turned away from the glass, pacing the marble floors, the soft echo of his footsteps mingling with the distant hum of traffic. His memories stirred, unbidden. He remembered a father's voice, warm and commanding, telling him stories under a fading lantern in a small village long ago. Faces appeared in his mind. Faces of a boy longing for guidance, for presence, for a hand to steady him in a world too large and too sudden. A butler knocked softly. "Sir, breakfast is ready." Kofi waved him away, his mind elsewhere. "Not yet," he murmured. "I need time." He returned to the window, his eyes tracing the lines of the city streets, seeing both the bustling markets and the quiet alleys where struggle and courage met every day. The contrast was a silent lesson, one he had seen all his life but never fully understood. The city offered opportunity, but also revealed the deep wounds of absence, loss, and choice. Kofi's phone vibrated on the desk. A message from a business associate flashed across the screen. "Meeting at 9. Important." He stared at it, his fingers hovering, yet his thoughts drifted to his father's old stories. The tales of rivers that could carry secrets, of ancestors who guided those lost between paths, of wisdom hidden in everyday life. A pang of longing struck him. "If only I could find him," he whispered, almost to himself. Outside, the city seemed to respond to his mood. The wind stirred dust along narrow streets, sending scraps of paper dancing like spirits. Horns honked, voices rose, and the laughter of children echoed faintly up to the towers. Kofi's gaze softened as he remembered the alley where he had once played as a child, the small faces of friends and neighbors, the wisdom of elders who spoke of patience, humility, and resilience. He felt a quiet pull, as though the city itself were calling him towards something unseen, something waiting beyond the wealth and walls that defined his current life. A shadow passed along the street below. Ebo, the beggar who carried knowledge and history in his quiet presence. Kofi noticed him, fleetingly at first, a figure lost among the chaos, yet somehow anchored in the rhythm of the city. For a moment, Kofi felt an inexplicable recognition, a tug at a memory buried deep. He could not yet understand it, but a seed of curiosity and unease planted itself in his heart. The penthouse, the polished floors, the luxury surrounding him, they all seemed fragile, almost unreal, compared to the life outside the glass. The city had become a character in his life, a living entity reflecting both opportunity and hidden sorrow, wealth and longing, the known and the lost. And as Kofi stood there, gazing down at the streets below, he realized that no tower, no car, no goal could fill the spaces left by absence, by secrets, by the story of a father lost time. He turned back to the window one last time, breathing in the morning air, and whispered a promise to himself. "I will find him. I will know the truth, and I will understand what has been missing all these years." The city pulsed below, alive and waiting, as if acknowledging the journey that had just begun. The city moved like a living being, its heart beating in the rhythm of footsteps, car horns, and the distant laughter of children. In one alley, Ebo walked slowly, his eyes catching every detail. A vendor dropping a basket of tomatoes, a child chasing a stray dog, a woman calling out to a neighbor with news of the day. Each movement was small, yet carried a lesson, a reflection of endurance, kindness, and the intricate weave of life. Above, in the polished world of towers and luxury cars, Kofi Mensah passed along a gleaming street. He was sharply dressed, every movement precise, yet his eyes betrayed unease. In the mirror of a polished storefront, he caught a glimpse of the alley below, the lives that thrummed with struggle, hope, and resilience. A dropped coin caught his eye, rolling toward the edge of the street where Ebo stooped and picked it up, tucking it into his worn pocket. Kofi's breath hitched slightly. A sense of recognition, or perhaps destiny, stirred in his chest. On the crowded market street, a woman's voice rose, calling to a child, "Be careful, for the city watches and teaches as it wills." Ebo heard it and smiled faintly. Words of caution, of wisdom, echoed from elders and ancestors alike, as if the spirits themselves were guiding every footstep. He lifted his gaze briefly and saw Kofi standing above, the reflection of the sun glinting off the windows, casting light and shadow over both their worlds. For a fleeting moment, their eyes met across the divide, a silent acknowledgement that fate had begun weaving a thread between them. The city seemed to respond to their awareness. A gust of wind sent paper swirling, a stray bird lifted from a nearby rooftop, and a vendor's bell jingled as a customer entered. Small events, almost insignificant, yet in their rhythm they spoke of destiny, of paths crossing and lessons waiting to unfold. Ebo moved on, blending into the streets, carrying the quiet weight of wisdom and history. Kofi, meanwhile, felt a tug at his heart he could not name, a curiosity he could not resist. He continued walking, eyes flicking toward the alleyways, the markets, the unnoticed corners of the city where life's real stories often unfolded. A boy tripped over a stone, dropping a bundle of papers that scattered across the street. Ebo crouched to help him, handing the child a worn cloth to gather the sheets. "The world moves fast," he said softly, "but even in haste, we must help one another." The boy nodded, eyes wide with understanding. From above, Kofi watched, a knot of longing tightening in his chest. He sensed that the lessons of the streets, of lives unseen yet deeply felt, were speaking directly to him, preparing him for a journey he could not yet fully see. Ebo paused by a fountain, the water sparkling in the morning sun, and murmured, "Spirits guide those who watch and those who listen." A bird alighted nearby, pecking at a coin left on the ledge, a small echo of the fate that was quietly linking him and Kofi. Across the street, Kofi stopped, the glint of the coin catching his attention. Though he did not yet know why, he felt drawn forward, as if the city itself whispered, "The paths of the lost and the found are about to meet." And so, in the bustling heart of the city, amid the clash of wealth and struggle, a connection began to form. Silent, subtle, and unseen by the many, yet powerful. Destiny, fate, and ancestral guidance moved like invisible threads, weaving Ebo and Kofi closer with every step, preparing them for a meeting that would challenge, heal, and transform them both.